So we welcome our first guest, who is a licensed mental health counselor and founder of Clarity and Wellness Mental Health Counseling, specializing in treating individuals, couples, and families. And their mission is to create a safe environment for clients to recognize underlying problems, fully realize strengths, and adjust certain behaviors and thoughts to meet their therapeutic goals. Quite frankly speaking, it's something we truly need during these times. So, everyone, please help me welcome our licensed mental health counselor and founder of Clarity and Mental Wellness, Clarity and Wellness Mental Health Counseling, Dr. Candace Crawford. Hello,
Hello.
and welcome.
Thank you.
All right, so I may be speaking on my behalf, even though I spoke on all of our behalf, because I just identified you as our mental.
It's totally fine. Listen, we are in a space that we all need that support, right?
Yeah, so welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to Open, and we are going to be open. We are.
Let's.
Yes, doctora in the house. And so before we actually dive into, I want to say our current climate, which for me is a topic that is at the forefront of everybody's conversations, right?
Absolutely.
Let's share with everyone the different services that you offer, even though I mentioned them. But what inspired you to even bring this to the Bronx, right? And to be of service in this capacity?
Absolutely. I've been a licensed mental health counselor for the last 10 years, and I opened up a private practice about 7 years ago. And what I recognized was that there was just this need for more representation, right? So we primarily work with marginalized folks, women of color who have endured trauma, people who really need that extra support, who felt like they didn't have that representation in the helping professionals that they were seeking out.
And it matters when we have to see ourselves in order to even feel safe.
Absolutely.
Right? And so kudos to you. And I know you started out individually and then you expanded.
Correct.
So let's talk about that as well.
So, there was a period where I felt like I just could not continue to help everyone that was really seeking out that support. And so I was very intentional about bringing on folks that I knew had that cultural competence, right? Who was going to be able to represent what those clients were looking for, but also infuse those cultural considerations in their work with their clients. So it wasn't just about saying like, oh, I have a Black therapist or a therapist who speaks Spanish, but what does it mean for you to be a Black individual? And how does that inform the work or the decisions that you make every day, right? So we really make sure that we're diving into it. So it's not just about the representation, but also making sure that we understand how their culture influences, their decisions.
Right, it's part of the language.
Absolutely.
And part of each individual's existence and experience, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And it does make a difference.
We can't ignore it,
Code switching is necessary.
Right. And then when you come into this space, you don't have to code switch, right? So that's something that we really kind of like value and really excited about.
It's very clear that you're passionate about what you do,
Definitely.
just in the way you express it, right? So you made it known that you really specialize in marginalized communities, right? So can you share a specific experience that happened or that you experienced that made you be clear about that being your path?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many experiences. So I'll choose one where I had a client who came in and was just really struggling. Like I was working with this one therapist who just did not get me. They didn't understand what I was talking about, or I would make a reference and they would be like, huh? And so coming into a space where I know that I can, talk about how I need to have my hair done a particular way, or talking about how like I had to, take off a particular day because of, something that I was celebrating. That was something that wasn't seen in their previous experience in counseling. And so when they came into our practice, came to work with me, they felt supported, they felt validated, they felt heard, just because I was able to say like, oh yeah, I get it. You need to take that time off. Or, you don't have to worry about throwing that wig on today if you wanted to, wear your hair differently, for this session, right? So they felt heard, they felt supported and comforted.
And the other question is, because you are a practice, a private practice, I should say, do you accept health insurance?
We do. Most of what we really want to make sure that we're offering is accessibility. Right? So, if we're talking about marginalized communities, we're recognizing that they are getting pressured in so many different ways, and we didn't want to stop that at the therapeutic level. So we do accept a few insurances because we recognize that insurance can be very challenging sometimes, but we do accept some insurances to make sure that we can reach out to those who want to utilize that. We also offer sliding scale. And then we
Nice.
do have interns at our practice, so we are able to even offer sessions pro bono if people really weren't able to afford anything.
So, how has your business boomed since the pandemic?
We like to say that, the pandemic was definitely a hard time for everyone, right? But in the sense of mental health counseling, it really did blossom because there was just a lot more visibility of, oh my goodness, we really need some help and support. There's a lot of trauma that's happening, a collective trauma, if you will. And so there was a lot of shifts in transitioning to, telehealth. And so there was more accessibility that way. And so we were able to reach a wide number of folks, during that time. And we're still seeing that growth because people are talking about it a lot more, where you see it on social media, and you'll see people say, I was talking to my therapist yesterday, and people are like, you're in therapy? Well, maybe I should consider it too. So we're definitely still seeing that uptick in people wanting to get that support.
So it's being normalized.
Absolutely.
There's no stigma around having a therapist.
We're seeing a reduction of the stigma, but the stigma is still there.
Got
And you
it.
can still hear it in
Interesting.
how people are reaching out and making those phone calls like, hey, I've never done this before. I don't know what to say. I don't really have an issue, or I don't think I have any trauma. And so we kind of help them to understand that, you might not have significant issues, but there are things that we want to make sure that we're, helping them to navigate those typical life stressors.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about those
Yes.
issues right about now, because right now I think we all have issues, right? Because we're dealing with it collectively. And you mentioned, collectively during the pandemic,
Yeah.
but here we are dealing with another collective mental, I don't even know how to phrase it. I'm really trying to keep it in the light. But the reality is that, America's in an abusive relationship right now.
I would agree. I would agree. And, we're existing in this dichotomy of a society when, there's a spectrum of things, right? And so people are having a hard time holding opinions of their own, understanding what's really happening, trying to have a voice. Even as professionals, we are seeing difficulty in how we're able to treat folks because of, the executive orders that have been kind of put out there. So yeah, we're all struggling, and so we welcome those conversations in the work that we do with our clients.
Yeah, and speaking of which, how does one identify that they even have a problem, even if they don't
Right.
see it, right? Because you're saying you're receiving phone calls of oh, I don't really have a problem.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is that we all are dealing with underlying issues right now.
Right.
All of us.
Absolutely.
All of us.
I think that you can start to, I always say, it starts with your daily functioning, right? Our daily functioning looks like, are we able to wake up, on time and handle our tasks? Are we able to eat well? Are we able to do our tasks? If we're seeing there's a disruption there, we can blame it on it's stress, or I didn't sleep well, or someone got on my nerves. But if we're starting to see that more consistently, that's when I say maybe there's some underlying things that we want to make sure that we're really exploring. So why are you not sleeping? Or if you're falling asleep easier but not staying asleep at night, or if you are feeling changes in your body, right? Sometimes people are like, my back hurts, or I have headaches all the time. Obviously, we want to make sure you get that checked out physiologically. However, sometimes that can really be impacted because of what your mental health is. And so I often tell folks, have you just noticed a change in just your regular day-to-day that you just can't explain?
Yeah.
And generally I say those might be connected to other things, because I always say that our mental, emotional, and our physical health are all interconnected. And so if you're seeing a change in any of those pieces, it's also it's best to kind of get that extra mental health support.
Yeah, I of course am taking this in deeply because the overload of information that is being put out, and then there's the question of I want to say managing being informed and being overwhelmed.
Yes. Yes, and sometimes people like to say that there's a privilege of turning things off, but I always kind of encourage people to turn things off, because we are at, the whims of everything on our phones, right? So we're seeing things, immediately, and while there is that instant gratification to get all of that information, we are not, conditioned to have to receive that information all the time. And so I tell people to please be mindful of what you are kind of consuming, because that really seeps into our unconscious, right? Which can impact our mental health. So I tell folks, put timers on your phone, or decide what kind of news broadcast you're going to look at. Make sure that you're having meaningful and productive conversations with folks, and not feeling like you're always engaging in some type of conflict, right, or challenge with someone else. So I just tell folks to really kind of turn it off a bit.
Yeah, which is great advice, and it is a little challenging because we are conditioned to um, refer to our devices as our mobile offices, right?
Right.
And then there's the, being alerted on whatever has presented itself, which there's a lot of alerts lately. There's just too many for us to even discuss. However, you said something that is a jewel right now. It's the type of conversations we're having, right? Which is really how one can transform their mental
Yeah.
wellness,
Yeah.
right? Right now, everybody's having the same conversation. And so the lights are being dimmed automatically because we're all in that same
Right.
conversation.
Right.
What would you recommend, right? Again, and this is gauging, like being informed and then being overwhelmed, and also just being caught up.
Yeah.
Like it's like we all got sucked into this cipher
Right.
of,
Right.
of an abyss.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. And so my recommendation would be to schedule things, right? See the news that you're, and consuming, see the conversations that you're having as something that can be, added to your overall well-being. Sometimes we have to schedule that, like we schedule going to the gym or when we schedule meals. So if you are not in this headspace to want to have these conversations or to receive such information at a time, schedule it for another time, right? So that's just a simple way. And I'm sure you and I can kind of talk about other ways, down the line. But sometimes we really just need that opportunity to say, I cannot engage in this right now. I know that I'm on the phone with this particular person who gets me riled up, but maybe I need to say we can talk about this at another time, right? So scheduling things can help.
Yeah, but I appreciate that, right? And I hear you.
Yeah.
But again,
Yeah.
it's almost like part of our society
Yeah.
now,
Absolutely.
right? So how do you manage that? How do you control it? How do I mean? And it's not really about controlling the conversation, but it's about establishing like boundaries.
Sure. And so we have to recognize that we exist in systems. And so we can't help the macro system if we're not helping the micro system.
Right.
Right. So that is something that I often, kind of say, yes, there are a lot of things that are happening in our society that are really impacting us. And we want to make sure that we're aware of those things. But if we are disregarding how we're existing in our micro and meso systems, then we're going to continually be overtaken by what's happening in the larger system because we're not able to control what's happening within us or close within us.
Right, and that's a consciousness.
Yes.
And that's why it's important for us to have these
Yes.
conversations.
Yes. And that's why we create these spaces. So we're just allowing space for processing, right? So that way people can have that awareness, so people can have that insight. And it's not easy. And sometimes we think we read one, great book, or we might see one nice social media post. It's something that we have to continually do because we are continually being kind of like fed such chaos, right?
Right.
All the time. We have to do what we know is best to kind of combat that chaos, again, at those smaller levels.
Yes. Oh, preach. I could just listen to you all day because that is the only way right now. The only way right now is to be conscious.
Right.
And understanding that your existence, it matters.
Yes,
And
yes.
and in that, it's in our best interest to really feed our souls joy and comfort and be okay with that.
Absolutely.
Amid the chaos.
Absolutely, because again, unfortunately, the chaos is going to exist.
Right.
Right. And if we're not going to be able to tackle it on our own, right? So we want to make sure that we have the strength within us, so that way we can again collectively work with other folks to combat what's happening on the larger scale. But if we cannot focus on what's happening within us, it's going to be a struggle.
Right. All right. And I'm taking everything you've just shared with us deeply. Before we wrap up, just share with our viewers, should somebody be interested in seeking your services.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we have a variety of different clinicians in our practice. Again, serving a lot of women of color, marginalized folks, queer folks, people who really need that extra support, who did not have that accessibility. We are welcoming you in person, in virtual sessions as well. So you can always reach out to clarityandwellness.com. You can give us a call at 347-450-6164. And you can also find us on Instagram at @clarityandwellness_.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Candace Crawford, everyone, once again, licensed mental health counselor and founder of Clarity and Wellness Mental Health Counseling. And for more information, if you're interested in services, you can visit clarityandwellness.com. And again, we're all in this together, mi gente. All right, stay tuned. There's more open when we return.